Dear distinguished guests, my name is Namphon Laistuklai, the head researcher of National Art Museum of Thailand. I will be the moderators for today's seminars. Expansions and dissemination of museum logistics, exhibition design knowledge in international level project under Thailand Academy of Social Science, Humanities and Arts aim to study international level management of the National Art Museum of Thailand. We have been contacted the Victorian Albert Museum, which is the UK's largest museum of applied arts, decorative arts, and design. And also we are invite 3 speakers from the Victorian Albert Museums, and also our project consultants, Professor Peter as well, to join this seminar. Let me have a brief of the keynote speakers today. Our first person, Dr. Gus Kesley Hayford, is a director of the V&A East, a new branch of the V&A in East London. He received a PhD in African Studies from School of Oriental and African Studies SOAS. He wants V&A East to tell the story of cultural production over the past 5,000 years with some wonderful shows of some of the great creators. So he will Zoom with us. Hello guys. Hi. And Eve Genevieve Lefsover, she's here with us, is the International Initiative Coordinators of the Victoria and Albert Museum. She graduated with a master's degree in Art History from the Control Institute of Art. She is involved of international levels project of the Victoria and Albert Museum, such as the touring exhibition in different countries. Okay. And Professor Pinay Siriratakun is a lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture, Silpakorn University. He holds a PhD in architecture, history, and theories from University of London, College of London. He is responsible in the design and the design contest for the National Art Museum of Thailand. Daniels, one with us today, also the head of exhibition of the Victoria and Albert Museum. He received his master's degree in museum study from the University College London. He is currently in charge of supervising the organization of exhibition in Victoria and Albert Museum. Right, okay. So let me have go the first speaker. You were talking about the concept and the design, right, of the Victoria and Albert Museum East that's just been overread. So I hand it up to you now, guys. Please.
Thank you very much. And what an honor to be here with you all today. And I will attempt to share my screen so that I can share some images with you. I joined the V&A 3 years ago. Before I joined the V&A, I was the director of the National Museum of African Art in Washington, D.C. And I had moved there with all of my family with the intention of actually taking up residency and staying. But I heard about this particular role and I realized that I would have to come back to Britain because this is the role of an absolute lifetime. That the V&A, which has one of, as you were saying, one of the truly great collections of art and design, was choosing to move its reserve collections, which were housed in West London, to a new site on the old Olympic Park and to create something completely new. This is a space that will hold 280,000 objects, 1,000 archives, a very, very significant art library, but also beyond just the movement of objects, that what was really thrilling about this as a project, at least from my perspective, was the opportunity for these objects to not just speak to a new generation of scholars and museum specialists, but for us to find a paradigm to connect these objects, which are, after all, owned by the public, that this is a public collection, to connect them back to their owners, to the public, and to connect them back to a younger and more diverse audience than the V&A had ever attracted before. I mean, I found that really exciting. But then additionally, to build a new museum to explore the stories, not just of the permanent collection, but also of other collections of art and of other issues around art and design, and to do them through the lenses of issues that would really impact and touch a new generation. So I was really excited. So I joined the V&A, and unfortunately, just as I joined, the pandemic began and we went straight into lockdown. And I came back into Britain that I hadn't lived in for a number of years, recognized that it had changed profoundly and wanted to get to know it. And so I bought a bicycle and I began to cycle to try to get to know East London. But I also wanted to get back in touch with some of the artists that I've worked with in the past, to get a sense of what their understanding of the changing creative environment was. I wanted to convey to them what it was we were trying to do at the V&A, to bring a collection to life through the narratives that artists could convey, but also through the relationship that we all have to making. So how could we actually infuse people with the idea that they are makers too? And V&A East, as I said, it's set within this landscape in East London that was always a place of makers and making. In the period when the Great Exhibition is actually happening in the 1850s, that Charles Dickens and also Henry Mayhew, the Punch cartoonist, they both come to East London to have a look at this area, which is one of the most kind of burgeoningly creative in the capital. And they both describe it in similar terms as a place of makers, of it's the carpenters, it's the tanners, it's the people who are working in the textile industries, who are all working in some of the most disadvantaged and problematic circumstances. This is an area which is downriver, so that a lot of the sort of effluent and the pollution travels down in this direction. The smoke, it all goes down in this direction. But even though it wasn't necessarily the most beautiful of places, it produced some of the most kind of exquisite design, some of the most talented people who have come from this area. And over generations, it has created an incredible reputation for being the space of creatives. This is the place where David Bailey, one of our greatest photographers, is born. And against the grain comes to absolutely influence and drive a narrative and portrait photography during the 60s and 70s, and is still going today. This is the place where Molly Goddard still kind of designs and makes her work in the 21st century. Yinka Shonibari, one of our great fine artists as well, this is where he lives. But across a whole period of time, this is a place where plastics are first refined, where colour televisions, where their first kind of British articulations are made in tiny little studios of people experimenting, testing, pushing paradigms. And we wanted to take advantage of some of that energy and to work with these incredibly creative communities, as well as some of the most disadvantaged, and to create a paradigm that spoke to them. And then our museum, in which we will display 2 stories of our permanent collection. We will have temporary exhibitions in which we want to celebrate the very best of art, design, performance, and do it in ways that will speak to the other institutions that that we share the campus with. And at the very top of our museum, a space in which we want to engage with creatives in ways that will speak to visitors, to have residents, creative people in residence, to find programs around their practice that will really speak to local people. So this is V&A East, a really, as I see it, exciting proposition. I personally think the most exciting in terms of museums at this particular moment, taking a collection that had been used but not used enough, re-dynamizing it for the 21st century, reinterpreting, considering it, but then also trying to find the ways of getting it to connect back to its ultimate owners, the public. And so one of the things that I will do before it opens is to visit all of the schools that surround the 4 boroughs that surround our site. And so that is about 100 schools, about 100,000 young people, to visit those schools and to take objects from our collections to talk about what is coming. And not just to talk about what is coming, but to remind them of the fact that these objects, that they aren't owned by the V&A, they are owned by the public, held in trust on their behalf. And they may be problematic, they may be complex, some of them are gorgeous, beautiful things, but we want them to come and to reclaim them. And where they feel that they want to engage with our interpretation and reinterpret things, we want to try to find the ways of making that a possibility. This is a public space, and we want people to feel like it's theirs. And so V&A East, 2024 for the collection centre, the following year for the museum. And we want to build a new relationship with our audiences, with our artists, with our creatives, and with museum specialists, but mostly with the publics of East London. So a very exciting project that I feel enormously privileged to have been a part of. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having myself and Daniel and Gus virtually with you. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be here today and to be able to talk to you about the V&A a little bit. I'm afraid Gus stole a lot of my thunder today, covered some of what I was going to talk about anyway, but hopefully you'll forgive me for some of the repetitions that will inevitably occur. So, of course, Gus was talking very much about the future. I'm going to take a little step back to the past and talk to you about the foundation of the museum, the history of its beginnings, talk you through a little bit through the museum's mission and vision, and reveal how that is reflected in the work that we do, how that's changed over time, and how we deliver the V&A's mission and vision today. So I'm going to start by reiterating who we are. We're not just the UK's, but I would say we're the world's greatest museum of art, design, and performance. I'll start with the name, of course, because that's can be a little bit confusing. Of course, here are the 2 monarchs whose name we bear. Here are the 2 portraits of them from our collection. The V&A has had several names throughout its history. It was originally called the South Kensington Museum for the area of London that it's located in. It was called the Museum of Manufactures, and that's another important aspect of our work. But it was renamed in honor of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert in the beginning of 20th century. In a homage to Prince Albert, who was a real visionary and very much a catalyst for one of the catalysts for transformation of Britain's creative industries, of which the V&A was a really key function. But enough about the past. I wanted to just give you a little glimpse of what the museum looks like today. an open note and talk about challenges or opportunities that exist for museums worldwide, sort of beyond sort of business as usual, beyond the work that we do every day, and to think about sort of the challenge, as I said, the challenges and the opportunities, and to, as organizations, sort of stay brave in terms of facing those, staying open to them, and having a dialogue with our audience is something that Gus has spoke so powerfully about. And this is just a kind of a thinking piece for you to also think about your organization in the future and some of the challenges that you might be facing, you know, with the protest movement, with climate emergency, with the challenge and the opportunity that we've faced with the pandemic. Debate around decolonization and restitution. These are all of the challenges that we're grappling with, and really value our partnerships and relationships and our global outreach around those. I'll leave it there. I don't know that there's questions now, but I'll certainly be happy to answer those later. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My name is Pinay Sirikatikun, a lecturer at the Faculty of Architecture, Lopakon University in Bangkok, and together with my colleague from the same faculty, Laksamon Maitri, she will be speaking as well. So on behalf of the organization team of the National Art Museum, we will be presenting to you the progress of the architectural program and competition brief of the National Art Museum of Thailand. Through our work, the organization envisions a strong architecture that is value and empower to create change that art and architecture can bring about in our society. We have been working closely with Chacha and Technopolis on the architectural design competition for the National Art Museum, which will be located in the compound of the Technopolis, as you can see in the slide, in Pathum Thani, 50 kilometers to the north of Bangkok. Right, I'm going to stop here and we'll give the stage to Laksamon.
Thank you very much, Professor Pinay, and Sawadee Kha. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to talk into the detail of the site, but as we can see from the first presenter, that site is very important. We believe that site is one of the most critical conditions of an architectural project. As we all know, that site gives criteria for the program. It also provides context for the design. As well, it identifies the potentials of the project. That's the reason why we have been working analytically for the site selection of the National Art Museum of Thailand. And as Professor Pinay said, we have selected the site at the Technopolis, and we believe that we can bring potentials of the Technopolis and our project together to create a new Museum of Thailand. First, I would like to talk a little bit about the background of why we select that site. We can see that there are museums in many locations in the world, and recently we have seen the growing interest in creating the museum campus, as we have seen in the first presentation as well, that he was talking about bridging the educational institutes with the new museum. We are on the same track, I believe. As you can see from the slide, I have the example of museum campus in the south side of Chicago. They have created the entire area, including several museums together for the educational purpose. We can see that the same idea is present in Europe as the Museum Island or the Museum Quarter, as you call in Berlin, Germany. There are also another museum complex newly planned in Sejong in South Korea that already planned in this way. So This study foresees that the National Art Museum of Thailand could be built in the same category of museum campus. And that's why we select the Technopolis.
Architecture has a large environment impact, so a design proposal which makes as little impact as on the natural world as possible is particularly welcome. The 21st Century Museum will be showcasing how design enhances quality of life while advocating for important issues of society through responsible architecture. The competition for the National Art Museum will be conducted in 2 stages. The first stage is an open competition, an idea competition. At this stage, we wanted a number of entries, as many as possible, as competitors are sometimes motivated to enter competition for reasons other than winning. For example, to gain expertise in an area where they has little or no experience, to raise the profile of a firm or a CV, to provide a competitor to think about ideas that it would otherwise not explore on a day-to-day basis. So this stage is divided into 2 categories, students under 25 years and registered architect. The first stage requires competitors to submit sketches and models that illustrate the central idea. The second stage, or the finalist stage, will be selecting 5 competitors from the first stage. Each of whom will be receiving a budget of 40,000 baht to develop the design in the finalist stage, which includes a requirement that teams be formed to substantiate expertise in museum design. It requires more detailed drawing, scale model, and cost estimates, and require a presentation in person for this finalist stage. Today I have just described to you the progress of the contest brief that we are preparing for the competitions of the National Art Museum of Thailand. There are, of course, some other important issues which is still going on and has to be conducted in the future, such as the budget from the government for the construction, also about the jury, which I think expected to be announced a formal public presentation in the near future. So I think at this point I have to stop now, as I have just described as much as I can at this stage to you. So suggestions and comments are very welcome. We want to hear your thoughts about the project. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and thank you as well from me for the invitation to speak here today. When a visitor comes to an exhibition, whether that's at the V&A or any other museum, we rather expect that they're going to take it for granted, that is simply how it is, that what they're seeing is what any exhibition of fashion from Africa or men's fashion might look like, that we're simply presenting an objective truth. And the fact that what they are looking at seems to be a bunch of stuff, which at the V&A we call objects, whether that object is a belt buckle or a Renaissance sculpture, does tend to suggest that. But of course, there is much more to it than that. When we make an exhibition, we're not simply turning out the attic and sticking labels on these objects. And what I want to talk about today is the many choices that have been made to make an exhibition what it is, what that experience is for the public. And in doing that, I hope we'll start to see what makes some exhibitions amazing and some not so amazing. The first exhibition is Fashioning Masculinities, the Art of Menswear, which looks specifically at male fashion. It's the first time that anyone has done this type of show with our specific focus and narrative, and it's organized around 3 themes. undressed, which looks at the male form, underwear, the relationship between the male body and fashion. Overdressed, which looks at flamboyance, bright colors, elaborate decoration. And finally, redressed, which looks at formality, control, the story of the suit. We invite visitors to participate in the playful pleasure of self-invention through clothing. We've mixed together clothes with different art forms, paintings, prints, drawing, sculpture, styles and periods that are known well, but moving them just enough so that we'll look at them in an entirely new way. Although there are some elements of this exhibition which are chronological, for instance, the story of the suit, we've deliberately tried to not follow a chronological order. And we've deliberately tried to place objects from different times and different regions of different materials and made with different techniques close together. The second exhibition that we'll look at today is Africa Fashion. It's a show which looks for the very first time in the UK, and this is still on in London, at the contemporary fashion of the African continent. But we've gone back to place that in the context of African history since independence, trying to explain not only what is happening now, but to connect that to the complex social and political history of Africa in the post-colonial period. In terms of the objects we've chosen, it's much more focused on fashion items, the garments themselves, than fashioning masculinities. But again, there is a lot of contextualization. Only this time, it's less looking at the realm of fine art, like masculinities, and more looking at the social history of Africa. So we're more likely to be putting contemporary fabrics and garments alongside historical photographs, which place them in a context, and the lives and the cultures from which these garments have emerged. So two great shows, and two shows which are doing really new things for us, but also two very different exhibitions. So I will start with where we start, which is the idea. Why did we pick these topics, and how did we refine them? I've already given one clue, and that, for us, is that these shows are doing something that we don't think has been done before. And by that, I don't mean we're looking at something that has not yet been explored. I more mean that we are finding something new to say about them. There are lots of brilliant subjects for exhibitions, which in one sense have been done before. What are the juxtapositions and vistas and relationships needed to help make our point, to prove what it is that we are trying to say? To which works are we going to afford great prominence, and those a much more supporting role in this story? Nothing that's seen is by chance. It's all been structured and choreographed and thought through in every detail that we possibly can, so as to allow the maximum impact of objects, which are our pieces of evidence in this argument we're making, in supporting the story that we're trying to tell, the story that is important to us, but also important to our public. And what we have to hope is that this then all comes together, and we find ourselves with an exhibition that speaks to a broad range of visitors, not just to the experts or the cultural elite, but something that a really wide range of public can understand without it being simplistic or dumbed down or patronizing. Something that people can relate to in many different ways, and which, hopefully, if we've done our jobs right, also advances the artistic conversation.
I'm just wondering, it's like, because normally, like, you know, ขอโทษนะคะ ราชการ style, like Thai government style, like you have to pick the, like, the, how to say, the company that in the competition, in the auction, like, based on the budget, like, if they not over the budget that you give them or not, and something else. So I just wondering if, like with this project, would it be still the same, like judging or picking the company that based on the lowest budget or not? But they might not like give the right design, or I don't know, like, yeah. So and how would you have the criteria or know that that design company design the right things that you really want, and it will be the best project that it will be in the future?
As I described to you in the contrast brief, budget is one of the criteria that every competitor has to be responsible for the cost estimation. But I think we are looking for the excellence for design and other things that I described. So budget is something that you have to be responsible for it. But for the jury, for the design criteria, there's more than that matter.
Okay, so it will be more detailed than the five guideline principles.
Yeah. The competitions packet will give you a more detail to that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. Thank you.
But at the moment, the budget is not yet confirmed. We're still working on it with Tacha.
Yeah, because I know like the most design company here in Thailand, of course, they might have the experience in designing the museum, but their background mostly they are event exhibition designer before, so which is totally different from museum design. So that as a person who study museum studies, so I just concerned about this point. That's all when picking.
I understand your question, but I tried my best to make this the best museum of art that Thailand ever has.
Because I think like support Ajahn Pinay, I think we will have a consultants that have experience about how museum works and how the construction of museum are. If we have after the competition design finished, we should have somebody who been consultant and have experience in museum management and museum construction. Yes, please, Daniel.
The technical requirements, actually, that knowledge you can get from any list of experts, kind of anywhere in the world. There will be plenty of experts in this country who actually know how to design museum spaces, how to treat objects and be prepared for exhibitions. The actual really difficult part of it is the creative side. And we find that our best projects are working with designers who have no museum experience. Because we've got the technical side, we know how people move in spaces, we know how the public uses an exhibition gallery, we know about objects and artworks and how they need to be treated. We can give all of that knowledge and inform the designers of that. But the reason we work with designers is because we need their creative vision for something. We've got an idea, we need them to turn that into something. Some of our most successful shows are designers who don't actually even work really in architecture in any way. We work with stage designers. We work with designers who make music videos. And those are often the richest and most exciting projects for us. So long as you have the technical expertise, it's actually the creative side that's the most challenging. And bringing those two things together, that's what gives you the best result on a project, not just going for those who have made tons of museums before. I don't want to work with those designers anymore. If you just design lots of exhibitions at Orsay and in New York and with us in London, it's like, well, they all look the same. You want to get a really good creative who does all kinds of spaces and designs all sorts of things with the technical knowledge from the museum team, and then you get magic.
I see. I think that might be true in terms of working with a designer that might not have experience in terms of museum exhibition designs before. Because as my own experience though, when I visit museums in Thailand, especially ones that under the government, when you get in, you will know straight away which company is the designer of it. Yeah, and after knowing their background and stuff. So I asked the question, just wondering, hopefully NAMT will be different from others, museum from that run by the government.
If one of us could be prime minister, I will be, I will follow. I would love to have something similar to, not V&A, but maybe quarters of V&A. So, but the thing that we put it in our research is we want the Thainess and aesthetics of sense of Thais that we could not compare V&A, of course, but we could have our style We could have street food selling in the cafeterias, and we do what we can and the best we can to offer. We have a lot of great artists, great designers, I believe. But we're not in charge of anything in government. So we do what we can. Perhaps it could be on paper, perhaps it could be on some exhibition, but it's what we can do now. And I believe all of us, what a wonderful museum for our children. I have a children myself, and I would love them to go to see museums. And I hope it could have a proper museum in Thailand one day. So we have a lot of museums, but it's not really called museums. So I expect one day we could have something called museum in the future. I hope it's answer of your questions. Thank you all to come here today. And we're looking for any collaborations we could help. We are Thai, so we could help each other to build together because it not belong to us, it belong to everybody. I hope is that. Today, you have anything to talk, Ajahn? All right. So thank you very much. Thank you for our guests. It's been such a great honor. We have a lot of experience, and we will show you the video before we put it on all the Facebook and all the publications. Thank you very much. Thank you.